We're ready to get our April City Council meeting called to order. I want to welcome everyone here tonight. We do have some items on the agenda. There's also a Purdue basketball game tonight at 9:20, and we have a Purdue graduate here as well. So we're going to get started with the Pledge of Allegiance, and if you could remain standing, Mr. Page is going to do the blessing of the meeting. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father God, we come to you tonight to simply give you thanks. We thank you for all the amazing things that you bestow upon our lives each and every day. We thank you for this amazing city. We thank you for all of our amazing residents, our businesses, and Lord, we just ask you to continue to bless each and every one of us in your sights. And Lord, we just ask that you continue to bless our public servants out there who keep us safe day in and day out, our military, our EMS, our police, our fire, our marshal service. All those have thankless jobs and put their lives on the line for us each and every day. All these things we ask in your most heavenly and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Page. Next, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Mr. Hicks. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Page. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, next we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Those minutes are for the council meeting on March the 11th and the work session and executive session on March the 4th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Have a motion from Mr. Anderson. Is there a second? Second from Ms. Avery. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All right, next we'll move on to awards, presentations, proclamations. And I actually don't have a copy of the proclamation in front of me, but I think I can talk to it. I apologize, thank you. All right, appreciate this. So this is a tradition that we've had since Susie Gajewski served on City Council. It started when we received the historic designation for the champion tree, which is out just down from here. If you have not visited it, I would encourage you to do so. It's estimated to be around 193 years old, so has witnessed a significant part of our history here in Sugar Hill. And I'm not going to read the proclamation, but I'll just say it is in line with some of the activities that our students from the elementary schools are going to be doing in our community this month. And I think it also aligns with a youth council project that they might be talking about tonight. And so thank you to everybody for signing this, and we will give it to the appropriate people. Thank you. All right, next we're going to move on to reports. I feel like we're moving like way too fast tonight. We need to slow it.
Absolutely not.
Slow it. Well, I'll recognize the city attorney to see if he has a report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report for open session.
Good, thank you. Next, we'll move on to council, and I'll start with Mr. Perkle today.
Thank you. Just a couple of brief things. One, I'd like to commend Pit Stop and the business down there. Owner used to be Mr. Lee. I'm not sure if it still is, but that they've recently gone through and pressure washed or repainted that facility. It looks outstanding. I'd like to congratulate them on that. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I see the mural going up on the parking deck. I can't say I'm a fan. I hope we're reaching our saturation point on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perkle. Next, Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Mayor. I first want to congratulate and welcome the newly open business, Lily's Boutique, who just opened this previous week with their grand opening on Saturday. So it's good to see that business owners are seeing our city as a place to build and thrive. I spoke with the owner who actually owns a boutique in downtown Duluth, and she felt that this location here in Sugar Hill would be a complement to her business, and so it was really great to have the council there to welcome her in. Also, I wanted to just, the council had the opportunity to do a pancake breakfast for our city employees. And I would say probably being on council is probably one of the best things that I enjoy about being on council is opportunities to be able to serve employees and those that are actually doing things that also I feel is thankless to a lot of these citizens in the community that we have. And so it was just good to speak with some of the employees and just really seeing how grateful they were and actually we have some really good chefs on council as well, so it was pretty awesome. We missed you too, Ms. Meg, for not being there. But also, I wanted to commend Avery and her team for the concert series that was recently announced as well, as a slew of artists that I'm quite sure she will speak to, but a slew of artists that feel would be a great contribution and asset to our community and our residents, and actually not only the residents of Sugar Hill, but surrounding community members and other parts of the town as well. So super excited about that. And then last, I wanted to just briefly touch on the Youth Council. They're going to have their opportunity to share, but I wanted to just, me personally, commend and applaud them for an amazing trip that we took to NLC, to Washington, D.C. They will give you more of it, but I personally wanted to thank Victoria and Chase for all of the hard work and efforts that they put in to make that trip a success. The council is amazing, and they will speak all of their accolades. So that's all that I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Next, I'll move on to Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder, our Riverlands Authority meeting is this Wednesday. Last month, we did a tour of the Crayfish Creek area of the Riverlands property. And in this month, we will be looking at the responses to the RFP for the Riverlands Authority Master Plan that was put out a couple months back. So we're looking forward to that, getting that underway and getting public feedback on the Riverlands project. And with that, I'll just say boiler up, hammer down, and go Purdue.
Ms. Avery, you're next.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to participate in a few different events and meetings in March, beginning with attending the Development Authority meeting that Taylor just mentioned. We toured Crayfish Creek and the city-owned property along the Chattahoochee River that borders Wild Timber and Twin Creek subdivisions, and that was very interesting and informative. A highlight for me was volunteering for the Sugar Hill Elementary School's 4th grade field trip to the Eagle Theater, the Sugar Hill History Museum, the Sugar Hill Cemetery, City Hall, and Gold Mine Park. The students had great presentations from both city people and county and school people. And as a retired school employee, I enjoyed spending time with the students and engaging in conversations with them about history and about Sugar Hill in general. They really asked some good questions, and I'm looking forward to volunteering again with the next groups in April and May. Sugar Hill had a wonderful 85th birthday celebration on March 24th with an impressive ceremony by the Masons for the elementary school cornerstone. And fortunately, the weather cooperated and there was a good turnout for this event. Our District 4 Commissioner, Matthew Holtkamp, had a town hall meeting on March 27th at Seconder High School, which was well attended and informative. He talked about transportation options for Gwinnett, and the Chief of Police and the Georgia DOT representatives were also there. Details and information are available on his website and on the Gwinnett County website. And he also has a newsletter that is available by email. And I would recommend getting that. One of the things that impressed me about the meeting was there was plenty of time for questions and answers, but several people in the audience got up and thanked Holtkamp for his quick response to questions and emails that they sent to him. So that was really nice to hear, that it sounds like we have great representation for our District 4. And on a final note, just a reminder, as we are having spring weather and getting projects and outdoor work done, if you are considering adding a deck, a porch, a driveway, making considerable renovations to your home, interior or exterior, please check with Sugar Hill's Planning and Zoning Department to see if any permits are required for the work being considered. In subdivisions with a homeowners association, there are covenants to follow, but we do have a few older, more established neighborhoods that do not have a homeowners association. To those of you attending this meeting or watching the video, it's important to check with City Hall to make sure codes are being followed and any necessary permits are being obtained. And also for residents who have decided to start an in-home business, it is required to have a City of Sugar Hill business license. And that ends my monthly report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Avery. Mr. Page.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you have a short report for this month? In the middle of March, I was able to take a budgeting and taxation class. I see lots of smiles out there. Everybody loves both of those topics. It was very informative, answered lots of questions. Down in Dallas, where I spent a day, we took an in-depth look, just looking at two primary sources of funding for local government in Georgia, both the property tax and the sales tax. We reviewed our budget, understanding how to read PT 38 forms, understanding how to interpret the tax digest consolidated sheets, and so much more. So thank you to Cindy for giving me all that information. Really appreciate that. In the coming weeks, I'll be working with our city manager, Paul, and finance director, Cindy, to kind of take a deeper dive into some of those follow-up items I took out of the course. So appreciate that opportunity to go and take that class. Also want to extend our Sweet City, of course, that belated birthday, 85th birthday event was well attended. It was a great, and just really thank you event staff and our staff here at City Hall for organizing that great event. And lastly, do want to say thank you to Mayor Paul, Jane, Nancy, Tim, and Megan for helping kind of get all those items out for our Friday pancake breakfast. Really appreciate lots of supervisory eyes on everything as we cooked our pancakes and everything. Some are better than others, I will tell you that. Mayor likes those big old thick pancakes. It's not my cup of tea, but really thank you to our staff for all their hard work. We served, I guess, almost all of them, right, Paul? About 90 to 100. Almost all of them came. So really great to have that camaraderie out there, and I think they had a great time to conclude the week. And with that, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Page. I will say Mr. Page is an excellent pancake cook, and in fact, he had 2 griddles going at the same time, which was pretty impressive to all of us. I have a short, just picture PowerPoint presentation. Some of the items have already been talked about, but I think I'll have some pictures that I can show you of some of the events and activities, and I think Mr. Awana is gonna bring that up. And I have a couple of, maybe 1 or 2, mark your calendars. Sorry, Taylor, I know we're pushing that 9:20 start. And I'll ask Mr. Wana just to go on and move through. So as Ms. Avery mentioned, we have been able to host 4th graders from almost all of our elementary schools. We have Sycamore that needs to do a makeup day. They had unfortunately it rained the day that they were supposed to be here. But I just wanted to acknowledge Jim Wright. Jim is a middle school teacher at Lanier Middle School and really loves history, and did a video and did a demonstration to our students about gold mining. And then Bill Harding, a member of our Historic Preservation Society, taught the kids how to pan for gold, which I think was a great experience, and heard lots of compliments from teachers and students and parents as well that heard from the kids that were very excited about it. Next slide. Next, I just wanted to highlight our first annual We Are Lanier event. This is something that the Lanier Cluster reached out to us about. We obviously have students that go to both North Gwinnett High School and Lanier High School, but all of the Lanier Cluster schools are within the city limits of Sugar Hill, and so they love to brand around the city of Sugar Hill, and it's good for both of us, to be honest with you. To the left, to my left on the PowerPoint, you can see we had really great attendance from everybody in the community. And then those are the 5 principals that serve at the Lanier Cluster Schools. And I can tell you that they're all outstanding principals and do a great job. Next, Mr. Wana. And then this is our last digital learning day that Principal Hicks has organized for at least a couple years now, and we always have great turnout. It's an opportunity for parents to bring their kids, supervised, by the way, by the parents, not by us. and they have access to Wi-Fi, and on occasion, they'll have questions about their assignments, and we all do the best that we can to try to help them. Next slide. And then just wanted to make mention of our 5th annual Sweep the Hooch, which happened at a location on Richland Creek. It's actually some property that was donated to us for potential park in the future. And as you can see, we had a great turnout from the community. I want to thank Vanessa Butts, who works for Gwinnett County. This has been a long-time partnership with the county. And Kevin Pittman, who works for our stormwater department. They work together and collaborate to organize this every year, and we always pick a new site. And I have a picture that I want to show y'all next. Here are tires that we pulled off of the site, and a lot of these tires have been there for years. People, unfortunately, just illegally dump tires in the woods. Not so much now because there's a state program in place that helps out with that, but those are the tires that we pulled out, and a lot of them were pretty big and pretty heavy. So. And then I want to just say thank you to the Historic Preservation Society, in particular, Catherine Baskin and Kim Landers, who serves on staff for the city of Sugar Hill. They coordinated this Masonic ceremony for us during our 85th birthday, where they rededicated the old Sugar Hill School cornerstone. That was originally put in place in 1940. And it was a great event, well attended. Masons from all over the state of Georgia, including Grandmaster Polston, who is over Georgia, came to visit us in Sugar Hill that day. And I think I might have one more. This is just a mark your calendar. I'm really, really excited about this. North Gwinnett High School, they reached out about doing a jazz fest. And I'm sorry the date's not on there. It is April the 20th. It's an all-day event. Starts in the morning and goes late into the evening. I think there's about 11 or 12 different high schools from around that will be performing jazz music on the stage. And again, just excited to support the North Gwinnett School Cluster as well. And that's the end of my report, and I appreciate it. Next, we'll move on to the city clerk, Ms. Whittington, for her report.
Thank you, Mayor. The Customer Service Department issued 166 passports in the month of March, 14 new business licenses, including Lily Boutique, who is located downtown. We also have, out of our renewals, 951 businesses have renewed out of the 992 active businesses we have, so that's good news. And as far as employment opportunities, please visit our website. We have some part-time and full-time positions left. A lot of the positions that we have been filled, but we do have a few opportunities left. The application is also linked on our website. And if you need a passport or any of those materials, you can make an appointment by calling the customer service number at City Hall or by going on our website at cityofsugarhill.com. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Whittington. Next is Mr. Radford, and I think he gave most of his report at the work session, but he might have a few items.
Yeah, quickly, Mayor, thank you. As you can see in the management report, that I'm proud we now have 12,233 active meters on our gas system. We're one of the gas systems that in the state that continues to grow. That's a good thing, and we still have the most competitive, actually the lowest gas rates of any system in the state. Our gas department and our contractors are working hard to put in the AMR accounts. It's automatic meter reading. We got now about 10,500 meters installed, and we'll continue till we get to our goal of 100%. One of our valued employees has left us to go to work in the private sector. Matt Allen has left us. He was our gas superintendent. And so Troy and Joe Appling are in the process of finding a replacement for Matt. We wish him all the best. And and we'll have some interactions with him because he's still going to be in that field of operations, but he will not be a city employee. Our marshal's office continues to do patrols around the city. 1,000 patrols this past month in residential areas and checking on businesses, our parks, and our city assets. And we now have an overnight marshal that we have hired as well. We're really pleased to onboard him. And just so folks will know, and we put it out on social media, but we will be starting to enforce through fines illegal parking in downtown. We've spent almost a year, I guess, since we passed the ordinance, doing education and then citations or warnings, but now we've gone to citations. And that is for overnight parking in the parking deck at City Hall, the East Center, and then along West Broad Street. We have a lot of activity going on. I thank you for the comments and the compliments to Avery and her staff. This past weekend, the Players Guild had its play. The wedding singer that was well attended, and I think they got one more weekend. And we will now start to get real busy as the warm weather gets here. With that, I will ask Troy for a brief update, then I will conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Radford. I mentioned a few projects at the work session last week, and I've updated these on a recurring basis probably since August, but the Alton Tucker Boulevard Extension and Realignment Project is nearing the finish line. There are about 2 more months of construction left to complete that project. Most of that will focus on the sidewalk and streetscape elements, but also include some final utility relocation and signal equipment activation before we can finish that project out. We do look to conclude that project in late May or early June. As you'll see, there are a number of pedestrian projects in the report as well, with a greenway component that was built largely by the private sector on the north side of Highway 20. We also have some sidewalk work that is going to get started this year on Whitehead Road, and so you'll see those in the report. One of the projects that is concluding is a cell tower reconstruction at the golf course. That one is wrapping up, and the temporary tower that was required for that project is coming down later this month. Out at one of our other parks, we are working on a stream bank restoration project. Currently, that is in permitting with the Corps of Engineers and EPD before we can start any work associated with that. And once we get comments back from those 2 agencies, we'll be able to enter the bid phase for that project. We also have a downtown greenway project that is funded through the LCI program administered by ARC and Georgia DOT. And that one is going to get started here later this month once we get some final comments back on the actual bid documents before that enters the bid phase. We're also working on a pedestrian bridge design over Highway 20, and currently that one is in review at Georgia DOT with some documents that are required to get that process started. First Avenue is the focus of some streetscaping we've completed recently with the addition of a sidewalk on the south side of First Avenue from Peachtree Industrial to Chapel Avenue, and we are also adding some street lighting associated with that as well. That work is expected to get started mid-April. I wanted to mention improvements associated with Phase 2 at Ridge Lake Park have already gotten started. We have ordered additional equipment for the dog park area, and some of the play equipment that you typically see at dog parks will be added to that. We are also providing some soft walking trails around the park, and also a disc golf course that'll have 9 holes. The disc golf has been laid out and coordinated with our local disc golf community, and we are going to be ordering the actual disc golf baskets for that here soon. Most of that construction is going to get started a little bit later this summer. The trail alignment actually started today, and most of that will be completed in-house. The street repair and resurfacing contract was awarded previously, but we are going to be considering on tonight's agenda the addition of additional 6 streets for that contract. The contractor wants to get started late April, mid-May with the paving, but we're going to also be revising the contract associated with the additional streets. With that, that concludes my construction update.
Thank you, Mr. Bisesh. Thank you, Mr. Radford. Last and certainly not least is a report from our Youth Council. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome. I believe we have a slide that should have been sent to you guys earlier today. You got it? Awesome. So while he's pulling that up, I'll go ahead and get started. Obviously, a lot has happened with Youth Council since the last time we talked to you. If you don't know who I am, my name is Riley Christie, and I serve as the mayor of the Sugar Hill Youth Council. And since the last time we talked to you, we held a booth at the 85th birthday celebration, which you guys have mentioned earlier, in which we allowed the community to paint rocks that will be implemented down in the champion tree, which Mr. Hembry had mentioned earlier as well. And in addition to that, we actually broke ground on our champion tree project today, and you'll hear a little bit more about our champion tree project and how that kind of came into our DC trip with Leron. And as for me personally, I have recently been employed down at the Sweet Spot, and just as a little bit of an update, we are working on updating our premium desk space down at the Sweet Spot in order to bring in new clients and kind of make that area more accessible and just generally better. And I would also like to say that this will likely be my final address to the City Council. So I'd like to say thank you all for an incredible 3 years. It has been so great to serve as the mayor and mayor pro tem and just a regular member my sophomore year. And tonight we're here to give you an overview of our recent trip from Washington, D.C., where we attended the National League of Cities Congressional City Conference. As a youth organization, we were both able to attend the youth delegate sessions as well as general sessions with keynote speakers such as President Joe Biden, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, and author and White House fellow Doris Kearns Goodwin, just to name a few. There were 4 youth sessions held, with the topics being building better cities, youth focus on parks and recreation, as well as the effects of political polarization within municipal government, respectively. And this is my 3rd and final time attending CCC, and I'm thrilled to collaborate with my fellow Youth Council members to share with you the value of this conference for our organization and for our city as a whole.
Good evening, I'm Maj Guerrero. I am a youth member, and in our first session, CEO Anthony talked about envisioning what we want our communities to look like in the next 100 years and how we can achieve that, which was actually super cool because it was correlated directly with Envision 100, which I thought was like pat on our back. We also talked about the nonpartisan problem solving and polarization, which Chloe will talk about later on. One of the main points was, which I thought really stuck with me, was talking about how potholes in the road are universal to all of us, and how not to take yourself and stick with a certain party necessarily. And it's talking about how small governments are more honed in on the community as a self, which it shows in our community, and how to put public service first. So it's about nonpartisan problem solving and how to work together no matter who you are, what you stand for, and how to get the community as a whole to come together. Also in the session, for our youth session, we had different case studies, and we were tasked with coming up with solution to problems and creating a model of our cities. One of these case studies was of Chattanooga, Tennessee, in which they talked about how to get the public to come back and after COVID to use their public transportation. And a solution that we came up with was digital marketing and more incentives to the public, in which we could use this to come back here and solve problems and find ways to have the youth come together with the council and figure out how to solve problems within our own community as well.
Good evening, council members, residents of Sugar Hill, members of the public. I'm Leron Yoon, a member of the Sugar Hill Youth Council, and as you've all heard, we attended NLC, National League of Cities, March 11th to the 13th. So for the first 3 months of 2024, I got the honor of serving on the YDPC with this Youth Delegate Planning Committee. So it's a select members of youth from all over the country. I got to serve with 4 other members, and we planned one of the workshops that the youth got to participate in. The name of the workshop was called Parks, Youth, Capital City, Capitol Hall, and City Hall. So the purpose of this workshop was to get the youth to brainstorm park projects that they could fulfill in their community. We had to also get the youth to come to a consensus of what they would contribute most to the community living. So we hosted a fireside chat with three guest speakers. We have a chief of youth programs, the U.S. Department of Interior, Mr. George McDonald, a member of the Parks Board of the City of Evanston, Illinois, Mary Rosinski, and council member of the City of Boulder, Mrs. Taisha Adams. These guest speakers were there to give us their experience, their knowledge, what it's like to work in Parks and Rec, to help the youth familiarize themselves with what they're going to need throughout this workshop. So our bullet points, or the goals for the youth, were to identify their project, and then how would they get community support for this? Would they advertise on social media? Would they go door to door and ask basically members of their city? And how is this project going to navigate through the city system? So it has to go from when it's first drafted to who's going to implement it, who's going to approve it, so things like that. Through NLC, I learned a lot, which was how to plan, first of all, a workshop, how to work with different members of a diverse group, and then also how to engage the youth, make sure they're interested, because we know their attention spans have kind of shortened, so we had to adapt to that as well. But it was a very fun and pleasurable experience. One of my practical sayings was, your net worth is your network. And I can say that throughout this experience, my network and net worth definitely increased.
Leron's giving himself a lot of credit. That entire youth portion was based on his ideas that he brought to the YDPC. So it was a big accomplishment to be able to see him lead that session. And it was based around our Champion Tree project. So something as small as doing up our Champion Tree project could have inspired possibly hundreds of youth from across the nation. So he's giving himself a little less credit than he deserves.
Lastly, like she said, our Champion Tree was inspired by this workshop. So we had been working on this Champion Tree project, and then we had to think of an idea for the workshop. So I said, in my city, this is what we're doing. And then that was basically what inspired the workshop. So we ended up winning an award for one of the best projects because our project inspired the workshop. So like Riley said, the love structure actually went up today. So if you can stop by opposite of Holbrook, so you can see that today. And that was all for me. Thank you for listening.
My name is Chloe Moore, and I would just like to say I hope you guys are all having a great day. I learned so much in DC. I think we all really did. It was such a great experience getting closer to each other and our advisors. I'm so thankful and grateful that we were able to attend. One of my favorite things was, of course, meeting the president. I think that was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be in the same room as him, and it was just incredible, and it all felt so unreal. I can't say enough how thankful I am to have had this opportunity. So I'm going to be talking about our final youth delegate session, where we learned about polarization, and we heard from 2 bipartisan groups, speakers, that were telling us how we can mitigate the effects of polarization. Polarization is the divergence of political attitudes away from the center and more towards the extreme. So just like most anything, political attitudes fall along a spectrum, and the closer we get to those extremes, the more dangerous our ideals become, and it's better when we're all in the middle. We first learned what causes polarization in order to stray away from it and avoid it. In this day and age, it's incredibly easy to become more and more polarized because of social media and because it's so easy for us to form a group around what we believe and what we think, and that's what polarization is, and it's becoming more and more extreme. In psychology, we talk about the confirmation bias, and it's basically when you feel comfortable, everybody feels comfortable surrounding yourself with things that you find right and that are correct in your opinion. And it's just best when we stray away from that and we do branch out and we try to see the other perspective. And our speakers introduce the LAP skills method in order to help us stray away from polarization and stray away from the extremes and come closer to that middle of the spectrum. And the L is for listen. So when you're encountering a person that obviously has a different point of view than you do, it's important that you genuinely listen and then acknowledge what they're saying. I think this is like one of the hardest 2 steps because we are all like so polarized that it's easy for us to not listen and not take what they're saying into consideration. But when we really stop and we listen and we acknowledge what they're saying, it helps us to create a different perspective, which is our next 2 points. Pivoting our perspective. And this is also, the lab skills in total is very difficult to do, which is why it's important that we do it, because we have taking in what you've listened and what you've acknowledged now that you've had it in your system, you need to pivot your perspective and think, and not completely change your mind, not go to the other extreme, but come closer to the middle. And listening to others and acknowledging what they're saying is our only way to get closer to that. Thank you.
And then the last thing for me is wrapping up our youth session number 4. We did case studies and debates. We were given the case study of lowering the voting age to 16, and we were placed on the opposition. Youth Council members Schuyler and Dobermere argued that the voting age should not be lowered to age 16 because of ID issues, lack of civics knowledge, and lack of education on political candidates. From this session, we learned proper debate techniques and closing out our NLC experiments with hearing of the voices of each youth council in attendance. It would also allow us to express our ideas as a youth, to show what our younger generation is going through in a time of social media, new technology, AI, different, times, COVID, we went through COVID, and that was a big thing for our first couple youth sessions. And also how we as a youth respond to older generations or respond to the world as a whole. With also using polarization and using ourselves to come to the middle with everyone, trying to create solutions rather than create issues. For me, I was taken aback. I was able to be in DC and enjoy everyone and the sights and truly see maybe what I want to do in the future. It was such I'm so honored to have gone. I want to especially thank Alvin Hicks, Victoria Richburg, and Chase, and all of my fellow people. It was so fun, and I really thank everyone for the opportunity.
All right, and to close us out, I wanted to talk to you guys about how we actually were able to meet with our House of Representatives member for Sugar Hill, Dr. Rich McCormick. And during this time, this is actually the day where the TikTok ban is being moved through the House. And he opened dialogue, and we had conversations regarding this TikTok ban with one of our actual members of the House. And we were able to share our insights and also hear his, and it was really nice to be able to bounce back and forth those ideas. And when we closed out our youth sessions, they actually gave out awards for the youth delegates, and I was fortunate enough to be able to receive one of those awards, so kind of like a clean sweep for Sugar Hill down in DC. But just to close it out, NLC is such an amazing opportunity that I've been blessed to have for the past 3 years, and these youth sessions allow us to network with high school councils from across our nation and share our ideas, what we're doing in our council, and initiatives with other cities. And each year we leave NLC inspired and full of ideas to bring back to our city of Sugar Hill to empower the voices, opinions, and the needs of Sugar Hill's youth. And the ideas and topics in the youth sessions are relevant to youth across the nation and help to set us up to be better leaders in both our schools and our communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you to our amazing youth council. All right. Next, we're going to move on to citizens and guest comments. If there is a citizen or a guest that would like to make a comment, they have up to 3 minutes Is there anybody that would like to take advantage of that opportunity? All right. If not, yes, ma'am. Miss Ema. Miss Ema, please come up to the podium and please give your name and address for the record. And that is just our process, and we appreciate you.
Okay, Sherry Imai, 360 Hillside Manor Drive in Sugar Hill, which is in Twin Creeks subdivision. Will we have an opportunity to talk later, or if this is it?
Ma'am, it depends on, I apologize, but what are you wishing to talk about?
The Chipotle variance request?
Got it. We will actually have a hearing on that when we get to it, and I would encourage you to wait until public comment on that.
Okay, that's fine. I just, sometimes you don't get a second chance to talk, so I'm
No, ma'am, there's actually always a second chance to talk, so I'm not really certain. But yes, ma'am. Anybody else? All right, we will close out the citizens and guest comments. We have no consent agenda. We have no old business. We will start with new business. Item number 1, Mr. Awana.
Applicant 30 AIP Sugar Hill LLC is seeking a stream buffer variance to allow disturbance and construction within the 50-foot undisturbed stream buffer and the 75-foot impervious setback. 5952 and 5962 Cumming Highway are 2 acres owned by Bruce Duncan, annexed into the city of Sugar Hill in 2007 pursuant to case number AX 07010. It's currently zoned general business. The application includes a site plan, which includes a quick serve restaurant with a drive-through lane to pick up mobile orders and other improvements associated with the proposed use. An ephemeral stream flows through a pipe, collecting off-site stormwater and discharges onto the 5952 property, then flows east to west underneath an existing driveway and into a wetland and buffered intermittent stream on the 5962 property, which is downstream to the right of this image. A portion of the intermittent stream subject to this variance request is experiencing some stream bank erosion. Within the impacted buffer areas, there is a notable amount of trash and debris and degradation of the existing tree canopy due to storm damage immediately downstream, as well as overgrowth of invasive exotic plants. Stream buffer variance application is currently under review by Georgia EPD for a portion of the 25-foot stream buffer. Within the city's 50-foot undisturbed stream buffer, the plan includes paving for that mobile order pickup lane, parking, dumpsters, and drainage improvements, as well as a retaining wall. In the 75-foot impervious setback, the plan includes a portion of the restaurant, building, and other site improvements. These improvements are all necessary to construct the proposed development, and without relief from the stream buffer protection ordinance, there is unlikely to be a practical alternative for redeveloping the property. Staff recommends approval of the stream buffer variance with condition that on-site mitigation is accomplished in accordance with the procedures provided in Gwinnett County Stormwater Design Manual prior to receiving a certificate of occupancy.
Thank you, Mr. Awana. Before I open up public comment, are there any questions from City Council of Mr. Awana?
I have quite a few, but I don't know, better to go into that now or at the public hearing. That's what I was asking Mr. Hartley about in terms of the sequencing of how that should go.
I think if there are questions for your staff, it's appropriate to ask your staff questions now. And then once the public hearing happens, if there are questions that are appropriate for the applicant, then you would ask the applicant at that time, or if any other person wants to speak. So it just depends on who you believe would be the proper person to answer that question.
Okay, so I've got some staff questions, if that's all right. And so I guess the first one is that it was mentioned in the report that there is a Georgia EPD review. Should we not wait till that comes back? I mean, I don't know the sequencing is there. I mean, if we review it and they turn it down, I would assume that we should not have gone forward with that. But I don't know the time frame on their response either. So that's just kind of an open question to whoever may have an answer there.
I think that would be directed to Mr. Awana if I...
Okay.
There's no requirement to wait on the state's review for the variance on the 25-foot. Those are two different ordinances.
But ours,
Legislation by the city.
if I understand it correctly, theirs is 25 feet immediately adjacent to it, and we're 50 feet outside of it, right?
That is
So,
correct, yes.
Our variance could not exceed into theirs, is that correct? So we could only vary the 50, we could not vary the 25, is that correct or not?
That is correct. We have our regulation or variance decision has no bearing on the state buffer decision.
So if we do approve it, we're only approving our 50 feet anyway. They're approving their 25, so there would be no need to wait on that.
That is
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
All right, so that's the first question of it then. The second one involving some of the pictures or the site layout, if you could bring up some of those. I'm trying to understand and could not quite follow in some of the drawings where the stream actually is. Obviously, I can see the elevation markings on there. I see 20, I see the building there. You mentioned that this stream emerges from a pipe. Do you know at what point it emerges and where's the origin of the stream outside of the pipe? Is it kind of flowing in that curved area, or can you give us any more feel for that? And the pipe goes, I don't know, if you can use the mouse or something and show where the origin is and draw it to where the exit is of the pipe. Is it that, it's not that black and white dotted line, that's the storm sewer? Or is that sanitary sewer, or what is that denoting?
The white and black line on this image, the heavy black kind of dashed line is proposed storm pipe.
Okay, so it's proposed. Well, what is currently there now doing that?
There's an off-site drainage pipe that discharges onto the 5952 property, flows
Do you have any way of
on the
illustrating that
surface.
with a cursor or something?
Right where I just highlighted.
I don't see any highlight. Or do you? Okay, over there. Yep, all right, I'm with you. All right. So that's,
Discharges onto the 5952 property, flows across the surface for some distance, then goes underneath the driveway into a culvert, flows across the surface in this vicinity.
all right. So
Goes-
help me with the layout of this property then. I see where the Chipotle is. The bank, is it the one where the pipe runs across, and then Zaxby's is to our left as we look at it, or is the bank to the left and that's the vacant property? Because there's one property between there and Jake Johnson Garage, if I recall correctly. Does that property, is that the bank property?
This would be the bank property.
Okay, all right. So it'll flow through these two connected properties?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the proposed pipe that would go in, and since they own both of those, they could obviously go through those. But the current flow of the water now, it comes out of that pipe, and you said it's just flowing across the top of the ground there?
From about this point all the way to the exit point for the stream, it's surface flow.
Okay, and then in a couple of the pictures you showed, some of them looked like just a small drainage ditch that would be seasonal based on the rain, and I would probably have less concern about varying that, but part of it looked like an actual flowing creek. So from the pictures that you've showed, do you have any way of telling us where those fall along the property lines?
This is the ephemeral stream area, the wetland. The starting point of the stream is right in here.
Okay, and what about the pictures that you showed? Can you tell us where those came from in relation to the map?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
You showed some pictures that actually showed the stream. Where are those relative to the map? The reason I'm asking all these questions is we just had this course that Mr. Hartley offered to us for the audience, and when we hear variances, we're not supposed to go out and look at these beforehand. We're hearing them as a jury here, and we're not allowed to go and obtain this information on our own. We're only supposed to hear what's presented in the case. So I apologize. If it were zoning, we could go out and look at these sort of things beforehand, but we've been advised that's not the role we're supposed to take here. So that's why I'm trying to put these different pieces together.
I understand. I'm just trying to understand the question so I can try to answer.
So this picture here, can you show from here, where is that on the map?
This is a photo taken near the property line looking upstream
Okay.
in this vicinity.
Okay, from there, then going back to the east? When you say looking upstream?
Yes, due east.
Okay, right.
This is a photo taken in this vicinity.
Okay.
Looking south towards the rear of these two residential lots.
Okay, and maybe this would shorten and help clarify it. The stream buffer itself, that only applies to what you referred to as the ephemeral stream and not where it's running across the top of the land. Is that correct or not? In other words, how far does the stream buffer flow? Is it only that green hatched area? Or does it go all the way up to the conjunction of the pipes there? Or does it go back to where they're proposing the pipes start at the bank property?
Where the red dot on the screen is now is the vicinity of the origin of the buffered stream.
Okay.
Everything
Buffer
to
only
the
applies
east,
there.
everything to the east is ephemeral and is not a buffered stream. It
Okay.
does not have surface flow.
All right, thank you. That clarifies the immediate questions I had.
Thank you, Mr. Perkle. All good questions. And as Mr. Perkle mentioned, this is our first opportunity to actually ask questions, and so that's why we have so many questions. So thank you, Mr. Perkle. Is there anybody else that has a question for Mr. Awana? Mr. Page?
Potentially, Mr. Awana, could be for Paul or Troy. In regards to going forward, I know we're piping this femoral artery and this intermittent stream. Who is responsible going forward to make sure? I mean, it sounds like some stream banks and some restoration potentially. Is that our responsibility as a city, or is that property owner? How is that? Because I'm assuming this more than likely flows back into Crayfish Creek eventually as it keeps going down.
Maintenance of the stream itself is the responsibility of the property owners where it flows across, generally.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Anybody else have a question for Mr. Awana? All right. We will now move on to the public hearing portion, and I'll start with the first 10 minutes for those that are in support of the project, and that can include the applicant. I'm going to ask Mr. Hartley and Ms. Whittington to help me with the time. Is the applicant here, and do they wish to speak? Please come forward. does not wish to speak. Is there anybody else here that is in the first category for support? All right, I hear none, so I'll close out that public comment, and we will now move on to the 10 minutes for those that wish to speak in opposition or express concern about the... Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is James January. I live at 1282 Frontier Drive. I have a concern. I don't necessarily have an objection or object to this rezoning and project going forward. My concern is really with the condition that the Planning Commission has provided that essentially says, well, come on, telephone. Okay. That the approval of the buffer variance with condition that on-site mitigation is accomplished in accordance with the procedures of the Gwinnett County Stormwater Design Manual prior to receiving a certificate of occupancy. That seems to me to be too little too late, or the horse is already out of the barn. It seems to me that proving or providing concrete evidence and that being a design for an appropriate stormwater, detention, because this one's going to be underground, as I understand it, that should be provided to the planning department before we give them that variance, considering the fact that they're going to essentially eliminate any buffer to the stream. And I also want to say that I agree with Mr. Perkle that it seems like that we also should wait to be sure that the DNR is going to grant the 25-foot variance from the 25-foot buffer as well. So, okay.
Thank you, Mr. January. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Mrs. Ema, how are you? And if you could, just for the record, just give your name and address.
Okay. Sherry Imai, 360 Hillside Manor Drive, Sugar Hill. And now I have a new concern. Hey, Paul, you said if the creek stream will be the responsibility of the owner's property that runs across. So anything created upstream that may not have been an issue now, 2 years from now, our neighbors will be responsible for cleaning up the mess if it's not properly overseen.
Ms. Ema, this is public comment, and we're not able to do Q&A, unfortunately. However, I can refer back to Kaipo at the end, and we can ask him to answer the question, but this is for public comment.
Okay, I guess I just have a public concern that our neighbors will be, have that burden on them in the future. We mainly, the neighborhood wanted to request to make sure there's a fence put in place similar to Zaxby's.
Ms. Ema, this is a variance about a stream buffer, and unfortunately that's out of the context of, yes, ma'am.
Well, I guess our concern would be anything they do to the stream is going to cause our neighbors future problems down the road.
Yes, ma'am.
So I guess
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak?
Andrew Schultz, 5350 Windswept Trace, Sugar Hill, Georgia. Just a question, if maybe someone could answer this along the way. We're taking an above-ground stream and we're going to be putting it into a culvert pipe. Is that pretty much what we're talking about? And then running road or property over the top of it so they can have a business there. So I'm trying to comprehend that. So they would be responsible for taking all the debris or anything that clogs that pipe up and starts backing water up. So I'm just trying to understand what we're trying to put a variance on. Obviously, they're going to need the area, so they're going to have to extend either driveways or property lines or something closer to that stream and change how the stream is routed. Be a culvert pipe or some kind of concrete, however they're going to do it. I'm a little unclear as to what's going to happen to a natural stream change to underground, or how does that work? So just a question.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Is there anybody else that wishes to make a comment? Yes. And just for the record, if you could give your name and address.
Carl Siegley, 520 Pine Rock Trail, Twin Creeks neighborhood. Comment I have, which is almost a question, but I know I'm not allowed to ask a question, is we have another new building at some point going in that's been approved by Gwinnett County, is a car wash. Their surface drainage will feed into this system. I am hoping, as a comment, that the drainage situation from the new car wash tying into the bank and the other one has been considered, and then it's going to dump into Crawfish Creek, one of the tributaries of Crawfish Creek. So not just these two properties, but the new property that hasn't been built yet, all that runoff has got to go somewhere, and it's all going in there.
Thank you, Mr. Siegley. Is there anybody else that wishes to make a comment?
Evening. My name is Kevin Thompson, 509 Laurel Run Place, Sugar Hill. My concern would be, ironic that Carl brings up the car wash and kind of everything downstream, would be, has it been taken into consideration? Not a question, that's a comment. The development that's actually going in, it's a 49-unit townhome complex. I was told by the developer, now, we had a little language gap, so I didn't quite understand him, or he didn't understand me, but I asked him, they're building big retention ponds. I said, where's that water going? He says, we're piping it out of the neighborhood, and it is going to a culvert down 20, was his comment to me. So my question, or my comment, or my concern would be, is that going towards the car wash and then ultimately the bank and such before it gets to Crawfish Creek? Has that been taken into consideration? That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Is there anybody else that wishes to make a comment? All right, if not, we will close out this portion of the comment period. Mr. Hartley, we normally allow for rebuttal time for the applicant, and in this case, they have not used up any of their 10 minutes. Are there any questions that you all would like to answer that have been brought up?
Good evening. I'm Bob McCann, Haynes Gibson Associates, civil engineer for the project, representing the owner. The plan for the project is we have constructed a retaining wall to try to, we're not touching the stream at all. We're leaving the stream as it is in the existing wetlands. And we're planning to build a retaining wall to try to maintain as much of the existing buffer as possible and still be able to build our project. So there will be no impact to the stream, only the buffer. We will have to do a full set of civil design drawings, which include a stormwater management plan, which will have to be submitted and approved by the city before we can do any land disturbance or construction on the site. And I'm pretty sure before we are approved to do any project or any land disturbance, we'll have to have the Georgia EPD, we'll have to prove to the city that we have been approved by the Georgia EPD also. Our stormwater plan will mitigate the stormwater flows on the site so that the post-developed flow is no greater than the pre-developed flow. That answers everyone's questions.
Thank you. Mr. Hartley, am I able to allow council members to ask questions of the applicant as part of this process?
Yes.
Are there questions of the applicant? Mr. Perkle looks like maybe.
Well, I'm not necessarily sure that it's the applicant directly, but I'm happy to stand up there and reply to some of the questions I've got. So first of all, you stated a minute ago, and I just want to clarify, you're not actually planning to pipe any of the stream. You're staying out of the stream itself, all right?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
We're not touching the stream at all. That's why we put the retaining wall, is merely to try to maintain as much of the buffer as possible. The stream will not be impacted at all.
Okay. You're putting in infrastructure throughout the property, coming from the bank property, going through and multiple inlets there. Are you retaining ownership of all that infrastructure. That's not going to be considered county or city stormwater.
Correct.
Right.
That'll
It's
all
all
be
private.
private system that we will have to maintain in accordance with the city regulations.
All right. In your letter to Mr. Awana, you stated that the 50-foot undisturbed buffer comprises 34% of the entire parcel, and the additional 25-foot impervious buffer is added to the undisturbed buffer. The total area is 54% of the entire parcel. I'll point out that's not our problem. You are obviously looking at a piece of property that may be unsuitable, so that's there.
Understood. Absolutely.
Also, I'll say, I love Chipotle restaurant, and I'll be happy to eat there if it's built. So I guess where we try and find ourselves is to see if there's a solution that could help you in these areas, but also not cause harm to the rest of the community there. And so I guess going on that, one of the things I believe I read in the report, so you're going to have a retention wall that you mentioned, right? You're going to have detention, which is, I guess, going to be underground, under the parking lot for the stormwater retention?
That's
all right. So if you're collecting the volume of water off those two parcels, and if water is running into that lead pipe from the other parcels, you're collecting more, right? It's going to run into your detention system, and then it's going to be output into that stream there. What is it you're doing to make sure that the output is not going to be at such a volume that it's going to erode the stream further, that sort of thing?
Yeah, we'll have to design the underground system to handle the flow of the water and mitigate that flow rate so that it's less than the existing flows right now. So that's the idea of the underground pipes. We have to make those pipes large enough to hold that water and release it at a slow rate.
All right. So you're holding the water and releasing at a slow rate, so obviously it can't be a straight through pipe, or it's just going to flow right through. So you're going to have larger pipes and a smaller outlet or something?
Correct. The underground detention system is similar to a surface pond, except it's in pipes underground.
Right. And so when you release that, it's going to come out of that pipe, and when you hit that certain level of whatever that pipe is, the rest of it's going to straight flow over the top of it, to the extent it can get out the hole.
Well, yes, but that's why we size the pipes large enough to handle that. You know, we calculate the amount of flow and rainwater that's going to fall onto that area, and we hold that area in those large pipes underground. So
Okay. And so
it's similar to a surface pond, it's just
right,
underground.
I understand. So then, particularly also if you've got to be high enough to hold water, and so your pipe is going to be above that, but you've got a retention wall, so you're at an elevation as well, going to discharge into the pond. It can't be at the bottom because then you're not detaining, right?
The retaining wall is simply to get the level up. The retaining wall had nothing to do with the detention system.
Right, but the detention system, going where it is and with the elevation drop-off, you're going to be still above the stream buffer level. I guess what I'm getting at is when you design it, just make sure it's going to be, the water's going to be going downhill from whatever your exit point is there. We got to
make sure that flow rate is not going to cause any downstream impacts. Correct. That'll be part of the design and calculations. We'll have to get approved through the city.
Okay. I think that's the immediate question.
Thank you, Mr. Perkle. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. And just to clarify this for council, the stormwater components that you are planning on including in your design will be, first stage will be water quality, which handles which amount of rain?
That's generally the 1 or 2 year storm event. And the idea for this site is we've already done soil testing that the first 1 inch of rainfall across the whole site, the impervious area, will be infiltrated down into the ground underneath the system. So that helps mitigate the flows off the system. The first inch of the site is supposed to all go down in the ground, so it won't even be released off the site.
So to clarify that, what you're saying is the first inch of rain infiltrates into the property as opposed to going into the creek?
Correct, yes.
And then the second component that you'll have will be what's called channel protection volume.
Yes.
Which is the purpose, what's the purpose of the channel protection volume?
Channel protection volume is just basically off a 2 year storm, and that's, once again, that's to hold the flow rate back, even greater levels, just to protect the downstream areas.
So the most common events will either be infiltrated or will have even further retention in the system.
Correct.
And then you'll have overbank protection for the storms greater than that.
25 and 100 year storms, correct.
and that outlet will release at roughly the same elevation as the current creek bed. Well, it's at least ahead of where the existing stream is, but it will be at a similar elevation. In other words, I think what Mr. Perkel was referring to was some concerns over erosion by it being released so high that it would result in erosion of the creek bed because it would be released so high, but you'd be releasing it down at a lower elevation
Pipe
close.
it down to the bottom upstream of where the existing stream is located, and it will flow out to mimic the existing drainage patterns, correct? At a
Gotcha.
much
Okay.
slower,
Gotcha. Another question I've got for you is you showed 2 parking spaces next to your dumpster that are within the buffer. There are 24 as the minimum number of parking spaces. You're showing 28. My question to you would be, would it be in the interest of providing some additional plantings back there and maybe some additional screening, could we lose those 2 parking spaces, or are those critical to the business function?
it was Chipotle, we're trying to get to what Chipotle likes for their operations, and they usually like more than that, and that's the most we could get on there. We could certainly try to do that if possible. I know one of the residents mentioned a fence, which is, I think we certainly would be able to do that as part of as Dorian designed for the final review. We could certainly try if Chipotle will allow that, that would be fine with us.
Okay, all right, yeah, okay,
That may be something we can coordinate during the plan review process.
gotcha. That's all my questions. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Any more questions of the applicant?
I have one minute.
Yes, sir. Not for the applicant. Mr. Awana, okay, got it. All right, no more questions for the applicant, so we will close public comment. And before I ask for a motion, I'll open it up for questions from City Council to staff. Mr. Perkel.
Yep, so I do have one there. And so it talks about a variance, but it did not state the depth of the variance. It says we've got 50 feet there. Are we talking, I'm guessing at least at some points, if they're wanting to go beyond the 50 and into the 25, that's a very down to 0. But do you have a way of showing on your map? Is it the whole thing everywhere? I don't think it should need to be the length of the property, right? Exactly. What is the extent of the variance being requested?
I think I'm just still displaying if, there we go. The red hatch pattern is the 50-foot. The green hatched pattern is the 75. That is correct. The 25 is right here.
All right, can you go back to the previous diagram? All right, so says the 75 is the impervious is the city there, and then the city 50 there. All right, so within the city 50, all of that is outside of the 25, or is it requesting the full variance down to 0 there? Because that appears to be kind of an uneven, right? You've got that one little triangle that kind of juts into it, and then the rest of it. See what I'm saying? Some of it obviously looks like it's going to be more in some places than others. Are we defining the variance granted by the picture of the map? It's you know, typically you might vary it based on the stream itself or something, and you're varying down to the distance from the edge of the buffer, but that doesn't appear to be necessarily the case here. I'm just trying to get a handle on what exactly the request of the variance is, and how do we parameterize that in case it comes back and say, well, we granted it here, but you didn't have it there, you strayed into other areas. Is one of these documents the official document that will delineate the boundary, or how do we identify that?
We could add a reference to this site plan in the condition, if that were your wish.
Mr. Perkel, does that answer? All right. Any other questions of staff? Mr. Anderson?
Kaipo, we had a question from public comment regarding townhomes that are under construction, which is in unincorporated Gwinnett, so I know you're not very particularly familiar with what may or may not be developed on that property, but looking at what's available through GIS, I don't know if you've looked at that, but it appears that the townhome property does not drain into this particular basin, that it actually drains into a different tributary of, that's south of this property. It looks like it runs behind Laurel Run Place and crosses Hillside Manor Drive before it goes on and meets up with this tributary further downstream. Have you had a chance to take a look at that at all? I know this just came up, so.
I did look previously. That syncs with my recollection of how the flow comes off of that county project.
Okay, so to clarify, we believe that the stormwater runoff from that particular project does not intersect with this project.
I believe that is correct, yes.
Okay. Also, Kaipo, could you pull up, if you've got from the EPAC, could you pull up photo number, sorry, I changed I had it pulled up and I flipped back through some of it. Photo number, I guess it's not a photo number, it's page 17 that was in our pack. It was page 17 of the PDF that was in our EPAC. It appears to be a photo looking back from the property, approximately maybe where the building actually sits, where the proposed building would actually sit. Do you have access to that? It might be helpful to see the current condition of what is within the existing stream buffer.
Yes, I'm trying.
It appears to be a large pile of tires. Is that correct?
There is a photo of a large pile of tires in the vicinity of the stream buffer on the current property, on the subject property as it is currently today.
It looks like there's a pile of tires, a shed that's in fairly poor condition, and a lot of privet. That's what I see on there. I don't know if you've got access to that, but
That is a fairly accurate characterization of the subject property, yes.
all right. Okay. I just want to make sure that when we're talking about what we're trying to preserve here, we know what we're talking about disturbing here, we are understanding what it is that's being proposed to be disturbed.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Hartley, are we ready to move on to asking for a motion? Is there a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the stream buffer variance with the condition of the addition of a fence along or as close to the top of the proposed retaining wall within the vicinity of the stream buffer encroachment, and additional screening as may be practical and available based on the planning, I don't know if we do the planning director or the city manager's appointee, however is the best way to legally word that, but the point of that being, if we can get rid of those two spaces for some additional screening, that if the two of them can work that out, that would be it. But I would like to make a requirement for a fence to be placed as close to practical as to the top of the proposed retaining wall. 6-foot privacy fence, to be clear, as to what it is that we would see.
All right, I have a motion. Mr. Hartley, do you?
Does that make sense? Sorry, that was really, really wordy. So, motion to approve as recommended with the addition of a 6-foot privacy fence along the top of the retaining wall, proposed retaining wall. Is that fair? Okay, thank you.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second?
May I make a second with the proposed conditions?
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Anderson, a second from Mr. Hicks. Any discussion before I call the vote?
I was going to second for discussion, but you clarified it with the privacy fence.
All right. Any other discussion before I call the vote? All right, I have a motion by Mr. Anderson, a second.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
Of course.
I hate to interrupt with motions and seconds. There was discussion about adding the exhibit.
Oh, thank you.
don't know if that was important to folks or not, but the motion and second did not include the exhibit. So if council wants the exhibit to be made as part, then we'll need to add that.
I'd be happy to amend my motion to add the exhibit as discussed, previously discussed.
And I'll amend my second with the conditions and the exhibits to be included.
All right, we have a motion and a second amended. Any discussion before I call the vote? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Thank you. All right, next we'll move on to item number 2. That's the defined benefit retirement plan restatement. Mr. Radford, I know you talked in depth about this at the work session. You want to just recap very briefly?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the city of Sugar Hill does belong to the Georgia Municipal Employee Benefits Defined Benefit Retirement Plan. We started that in 2018. There's been some changes to the plan. That is the general plan that is under their auspices of the Georgia Municipal Employee Benefit Program. And there's been changes in IRS statutes, and they've asked for all the cities that are part of this to re-adopt the plan, as well as we do it as an ordinance and an adoption agreement, as well as the service credit purchase addendum that was part of our plan when we did adopt it in 2018. Just as background, the GMEDS Trust manages invest in assets of 290 city systems retirement plans around the state. Ours is at a coverage ratio of 94.04%, and the amount of assets that GMA and the Georgia Municipal Employee Benefit Program actually manages on behalf of these 290 cities is $3 billion. And so that's what helps make the plan a very successful plan. So tonight, I'm asking that you consider authorizing the mayor to execute, the city clerk to attest, and for the city attorney to sign I think the terms would be in the form of, is that the correct term? Or approving as to form?
That is correct. The city attorney in this case will only approve the form of the ordinance. The city attorney is not, does not specialize in retirement plans, and so therefore cannot provide any advice as to the legalities of the retirement plan or the tax consequences thereof. That is what we have hired GMA and GMEBs to do. And so the city attorney will only attest as to form. That is correct.
Once the council authorizes the mayor to sign and the others to attest and to approve as to form, we will then send that to the GMEBs for approval. They will then execute it on their part and send it back to us, and then our plan will continue its taxing status. So with that, Mayor, that is the motion that I would ask that you consider, and the documents that you have before you.
Thank you, Mr. Radford. Are there any questions of Mr. Radford from City Council?
I do have some comments.
Yes, sir.
All right, so this plan was instituted in 2016, I believe you said, or 2018, right? So prior to that, the city had a defined contribution plan as opposed to a defined benefit plan, the difference being guaranteeing what you put in versus what you get out. And so most of the private sector has moved away from the defined benefits plan because of the sort of open-ended liability, for lack of a better term with that. Did some checking on this. So what we're currently doing, most defined contribution plans, like a 401k type, and there's obviously a government equivalent of that, you would set aside, it's typical, like 5% of the employee salary in there, and it sometimes is matched, sometimes maybe just a direct contribution in there. Under our plan that's here, that's a defined benefit plan, in 2023, I think we contributed $438,000, so about 9.98% of the salary pool. In 2024, is anticipated at $458,960, which is 9.58% of the salary pool. And that fluctuates based on the market because obviously you have to contribute more to make up for any market gains that are not there. They base it on like a 7.7% return, and if that return is not there, it's got to be made up by more contributions. The point I'm making at it is that I think it's great for employees. It's bad for the payers in the system. I'm not looking to go in and change that for anyone that's in the system now. I think at some point, which I'm not necessarily saying this tonight, but I think we need to investigate that a little more and consider newly hired employees should go back on a defined contribution system instead of defined benefit system. The one thing I do say we need to change tonight is there is a provision in here for elected officials and board members to receive a pension. And I've served as an elected official for 16 years. I will say during that 16 years, I worked as hard or harder than anybody that was on any of those councils there. And I do not believe what we do is enough work to require a pension. And I think we should remove that section of it when we approve this now. That's a checkbox that's on page 5. It's, I guess, heading 9, subheading A, actually subheading B, for elected or appointed members of the governing authority. That part, I think, should be removed. Other than that, I'm fine going forward with it for now.
Mr. Radford, can you talk a little bit about the city council portion of that and the contributions?
When we adopted the plan, most of the cities do have various forms of retirement benefits for elected officials that serve. And ours is $35 for every year of public service. So that's what that's how much they would get. Our neighboring cities have similar plans. You'll probably find them all over the board within the 290 systems that is managed by the GMEBS Trust. Some much more lucrative, if you will. Ours is probably one of the more conservative benefits that would be provided, but it was done so at the time to provide some benefit to those who serve in elected, for long-term in elected office. It does not extend to any of our other boards. It's only for the elected officials of City Council. And if I could, Mayor, speaking to the comment from Mr. Perkel about the potential change moving forward for new employees. I certainly understand that comment. You can hear that from time to time. A defined benefit plan is extraordinarily important for both the recruitment and retention of employees. And public safety is one of them, but employees that have options in a lot of cities around the state and other or county governments or regional commissions, and all those are part of various defined benefit plans. I would encourage this body to stay the course with the plan we have. It is we have a coverage ratio that is well over what the state law and federal law require. We're at 94% coverage. In the cost differential between a defined benefit plan for us and a defined contribution plan, as well as the 457 plan that was in place at the 3% level, and back in 2017, would not have provided an adequate retirement for our employees at the time. It's the difference, the cost difference is fairly minimal between what they would have been if you had projected it forward with inflation from what our employee workforce looked like back then and how much they were contributing to 457. I think we have an obligation to provide as much hope as we can to our employees that if you're loyal to us, we'll be loyal to you, and you can have a normal retirement if you elect to stay here the course, or if you do leave and you go to work for another municipal system that's part of the GMEBS program, that you can port your retirement to that community and not be a liability for the city of Sugar Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Radford. And if I recall, under the old plan, because some of our employees make so little, that they did not do anything. And just having this extra incentive has encouraged a lot of them to actually to put funds towards retirement. And that's been the big difference, I think, between what we had and what we have now. So,
If we could just even talk about that, is that one of the items you're going to be considering tonight is the service credit purchase agreement addendum. And what that is, it's no longer in place. It was only for a limited period of time. But our employees had 2 3-month windows to purchase earned credit with their own resources. And our employees paid well over $1 million of their own resources to buy those years of service. They felt it was more important to take them from their 457 or their 401 and port those over to buy credit in our defined benefit system. And the defined benefit systems do in the public sector have had a bad rap. Many of the private sector folks have gone away from those. And even cities and counties in the Midwest and Northeast that are part of a unionized state, especially in local government where you have police unions, you have fire unions, and in many cases you have a municipal employee unions. They then are collectively bargained in that, and cities can't afford those plans. We do not have that here in Georgia, and our contributions, the city's contributions, are about the same as what they were before under the 3% plan in the 457 match. Could have been higher had employees actually been taking advantage of deferring revenue, deferring income with the maximum 457 match. They weren't doing that. But the difference is minimal, and our system, I think, is in a very strong financial position. So that's my recommendation.
thank you, Mr. Radford. And I'll just fully disclose that since the 457B option has been available to elected officials, I have actually taken advantage of it, not because I think I'm better than anybody, or not because I'm trying to squeeze the city of money, but just because I only get compensated $400 a month to serve, and it just is smart to put your money somewhere towards retirement. And so I did it with not ill intent or anything like that. And so I just wanted to make that comment.
I've got some additional comments, Mayor, or Mr. Anderson, to whoever you choose to recognize.
Mr. Page, I think, wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I hear both sides here. I think what's important is a greater conversation on retention and what we're looking for in a civil servant, especially coming to do manual labor. I mean, you're working on the streets, you're in the heat, you're in the cold, you work on the gas system, you're outside. I mean, our employees do great work, especially in public works, and I think that's a great incentive to get them here and to really try to capitalize on that top talent from, I hate to say it, to poach from other municipalities if they want to come work for the sweet city. And I think that's something that, maybe a greater conversation on what our benefit package actually looks like to get better retention rates, if we can improve something like that. And I think this is a stepping stone. Is it a perfect stepping stone? Not necessarily, but I think it's a stepping stone to a greater conversation on how we can retain the top talent here in Sugar Hill, here in Gwinnett County, and what we can do for our employees. So I know a lot of our employees, we heard on Friday, they enjoy working here, they want to be here in the Sweet City, and I want them to keep being here in Sugar Hill. So whatever we can do to really have that greater conversation on retention, I think that's kind of the way we really need to go.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Mr. Perkle?
Mr. Radford made the comment that it cost about the same. I don't see how that's possible. If we were contributing 5% before and we're contributing in the range of 10% now, that seems like it's double. However, I'm not saying that's an excessive amount, $458,000. We can definitely afford that. My concern is that it's not a capped amount where it is under the other plan. And so that could be 9% this year. It could be 20% next year at some point in the future. We don't know what that is because we're required to make up the short flows in the market if there are any. But as I said, that all those I think are more something for a later conversation. I'm not getting into that at this point. What I do have issue with is the elected official part. It says $35 a month for each year of total credited service as an elected or appointed official. So if you happen to serve for 10 years, by my calculation, that's $350 a month. We currently make $300 a month. I just don't see where this job should require us to be paid basically our whole salary for the rest of our lives. If you happen to make a statement of 20 years of service, that would be double the amount we earned as a council member. I just think that's far excessive for something that we've signed up and volunteered to do. So I'm opposed to that part of it. Thank you.
Ms. Avery?
I have a question for Mr. Hartley. On page 5, where it says, elected or appointed members of the governing authority are eligible. So are not board members considered appointed members of the governing authority? I know, Mr. Radford, you said they're not, but in the black and white, it says or appointed members. We appoint members to the DDA, to the planning zone. They take an oath to the city of Sugar Hill.
Ms. Avery, they do not earn a salary, so it would be impossible to do that. In my opinion, and I'll let Mr. Hartley answer, we appoint our city manager, we appoint our city clerk, and we appoint our city attorney. Obviously, he is compensated in a contractual role, but I'll let Mr. Hartley answer the question.
Just one comment while he's looking that up. I hate to put Mr. Hartley on the spot. As he obviously mentioned, he's not a retirement attorney. I did have some conversations with the head of the program today, and we do have some flexibility on timelines. She said basically just get it in with the next couple of months. I think the document here said by May, so if we have some uncertainty, we can certainly revisit that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Hartley.
So, yes, Councilmember Avery, so the language of that section deals with two types of folks. One is the members of the governing authority, and the other is municipal legal officers. So that would obviously the second part of that would include your city attorney. And as noted previously, your city attorney does not participate in this plan. But it says members of the governing authority. Governing authority for the city of Sugar Hill would be defined only as the city council. So while you do appoint other members of boards or authorities, those boards and authorities are not the governing authority of the city, and so therefore it only applies to the governing authority of the city, which is the city council.
Thank you. I just wanted to be totally clear about that, thinking maybe in a year or two, somebody who's been on a board for a while says, oh, by the way, I think I should be eligible for this. So I just wanted to make absolutely crystal clear. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Anderson.
I'm fine with having a more detailed conversation about our employee benefits at a different time, since this is really not the point of what this adoption is here. But I will say that I think Mr. Page's comments are very spot on regarding retention, and we only need to look within our own county as to the result of a change in this plan, and that would be to Gwinnett County, and specifically to the Gwinnett County Police Department. Ever since they have changed their retirement plan from a defined benefit to a defined contribution, that has resulted in a number of vacancies and lost employees. Gwinnett County, I think, is somewhere in the neighborhood over 3 years, which is usually the time that a Gwinnett County police officer leaves their employment with Gwinnett County, costs the county about $250,000 roughly. Don't quote me on that number. That's a rough number that in conversations with the police department, that I've been told. So they get some of the, well, they do get the best training, and I have to give this to Gwinnett County. We have a Gwinnett County police officer in attendance tonight. They get the best training in the state, bar none. That is probably as close to an undisputable opinion as there is, but I would think that if you ask Gwinnett County, or a police officer across the state, they would point to Gwinnett County as an incredible place to get trained. So what we are doing as taxpayers, because we are all up here taxpayers of Gwinnett County, we are shouldering the load as a taxpayer to train the state's police officers, because Gwinnett County is struggling to retain police officers because they do not have a defined benefit program. And police officers, rightly, smartly, because they don't make much money, leave immediately to find a defined benefit program, and there are plenty of them throughout the state. So we face the same problem here if we change our plan in terms of retention. And that doesn't speak specifically to our marshal's office. It speaks to our entire staff and the ability to retain our entire staff, but it would have a significant impact on our ability to retain and recruit new marshals going forward. So I just want to make that clear that is a huge problem that is happening in Lawrenceville right now. So, and so I just wanted to make that point. And I would encourage our council to have a conversation with both Gwinnett County Police and our marshals, have their own conversations regarding this particular topic with them so that they can express their opinions to you, because I think they're extraordinarily important.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Any other questions or comments? All right. I'll ask if there is a motion. It can be.
I'd make a motion to approve the document with removing the eligibility of elected officials.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Perkle. Is there a second?
I would second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion before I call the vote? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. All right, motion fails. Is there a substitute motion?
Mayor, I make a motion to accept the Georgia Municipal Employees Benefit System Defined Benefit Retirement Plan Restatement as presented by the city manager.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion before I call the vote? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Okay. Does everybody have to vote, Mr. Hartley?
We haven't given you the option, but
Yeah, I mean, I would call for the other side of the vote, obviously, to see
Got it.
what happens.
I thought that I did, and I apologize.
Those in favor, but
All right.
Do we need to do that for the first motion for Mr. Perkles? Okay, so let me go back to Mr. Perkles' original, because he did not call for the other side of that vote.
Oh, all right.
Are you sure that I did not call for that?
No, because I didn't raise my hand.
Okay, got it. I think I just assumed because there was no hands. You got it. All right, so we'll go back to Mr. Perkles' motion. I'm sorry, if you could just start all over.
It was a motion to approve the document with the removal of the eligibility of elected officials.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second?
I would second that.
I have a second from Ms. Avery. Any further discussion?
Yes. Mr. Hartley, can I make a motion to table this to the May meeting?
We have a motion and a second. I need to go through that motion, correct? And if that motion fails, then I will ask for a substitute motion.
I'll be happy to withdraw in
Okay.
favor of table.
You got it. We have a withdrawal, and I'm assuming that takes out Ms. Avery's second. All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to table the GMEB's defined benefit retirement plan until the May work session meeting.
All right, we have a motion to table until May. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second from Mr. Perkle. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of tabling, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? Okay. All right, I'm glad to move on to another item. Item number 3, GDOT LMIG application.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one was reviewed at the work session last week. This is announcing a second round of funding for the Local Maintenance Improvement Grant Program administered by the Georgia Department of Transportation that makes available some $306,314.17 of additional funds for 2024. I have amended my memo from last week not only to consider the additional 6 streets that are recommended by staff for eligibility in the new round of funding, but also to authorize the mayor to approve a contract amendment with Garrett Paving for those additional 6 streets, taking the contract total up to an amount of some $950,000, and then also to approve a budget amendment that would correspond to that. The additional 6 streets for consideration are in the staff memo, but they are Somerset Rose Lane, Aylesbury Court, Sudbury Point Lane, Malt D Court, Pine Isle Way, and Diggers Way. They are roads that score very poorly on our pavement rating assessment that we completed in 2022. I've provided some photographs of the condition of these streets, Pine Isle being a roadway score of 19. Somerset Rose Lane has a very low score. On the map, it shows 0, but it's an average of a little bit higher than that with alligator cracking and some distressed pavement condition on that road. Aylesbury Court and Sudbury are in the same neighborhood with low or average of some 38 with pavement conditions very similar. Malt D Court is one that would complete a neighborhood's condition and bring the whole neighborhood up, and that has an average score of 52. And then I think that was the last one. The map kind of shows you the locations of these 6 streets, and they are south of Highway 20, and we will be looking for the next round of funding here pretty soon, and we've talked about adding some additional pavement management solutions for a future contract. The subdivision names are listed here, and then the budget amendment would increase the budget by the $306,000, which is made available from state funds. With that, Mr. Mayor, my recommendation is that we approve the submission of the additional 6 streets to Georgia DOT for funding in the second round of LMIG, that we add those 6 streets to the contract, authorizing the mayor to sign that agreement up to a total budget amount or contract amount of $950,000, and that we amend the budget accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Besesh. Are there any questions of Mr. Besesh from City Council? All right, no questions. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, I have a motion to approve from Mr. Perkle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Anderson. Any discussion before I call the vote? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Okay. Next, we'll move on to item number 4, and that is the road pavement repair policy. Mr. Besesh, I think we were maybe waiting on some data. Did that data arrive?
Do not have all the data back yet, so I would recommend we table this to May.
I think Mr. Perkle was okay with that until May. Is there a motion to table until May?
Make a motion to table till the May meeting.
Have a motion to table from Mr. Perkle. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion before I call the vote? All right, all those in favor of tabling, please raise your right hand. All right, next we'll move on to item number 5, that is the auditor selection. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. As I presented during the work session, our auditor of 10 or 11 years have decided not to retain us as a client because of some of his other existing clients, as well as his tax and corporate work. So that left us with trying to reach out and find other auditing firms that we could look at. We did in-depth look at two of them, Malden and Jenkins and Rushton, both fine firms. One's out of the Atlanta area, one's out of Gainesville. They both have extensive city and county clients. We are recommending that you select and appoint Malden and Jenkins, CPAs and advisors, to perform the city's FY23 audit. And then we would use that as guidance of how we would go forward. Malden and Jenkins currently does a lot of work in Gwinnett County. They do the Gwinnett County SPLOST audit, so we have some experience with them. We have a contract CPA that we work with, that works with Cindy in our finance department, and they've had a relationship with him in various other cities, and he's had a relationship with them. And so that's good for us in terms of the continuity. They indicate that they can get the audit done by the June 30th deadline. And with that, we are recommending the appointment of Malden and Jenkins to perform the city's 2023 audit, and we have no budgetary impact since it came in within budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Radford. Any questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Parkle.
Yeah, Mr. Radford, would you clarify or restate that? You said if we hire them, they can meet the original deadline of this June? Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parkle. Any other questions? All right, is there a motion?
I will make the motion for the city to contract with Malden and Jenkins as our auditing firm.
Thank you, Ms. Avery. I have a motion from Ms. Avery. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Hicks. Any discussion before I call the vote? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. We have no other items. I do know that we have one legal item from Mr. Hartley for executive session that we need to talk about. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
I'll make a motion to go into executive session for legal, real estate, and personnel matters.
And I should clarify, Mr. Hartley told me that last week. Do you still have a need to talk about it? Okay. There is a motion. Is there a second? Second. All right, all those in favor of going into executive session, please raise your right hand. All right, we'll go in. It'll be very brief, and then we'll come back out and adjourn the meeting. All right, we are back. Sorry, I need to ask Jane if she's ready. All right, we are back from executive session. We discussed one legal matter. There's no action that we need to take outside of executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn our April City Council meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Second from Ms. Avery. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All right, we are adjourned until next month.
Get home, Taylor.